Victoria had a ghost in her heart, the one who got away. In our 4th year of marriage, she took in a boy who looked just like him. And I was the last person in the world to find out. That day, the boy and I wore the exact same red suit. Victoria frowned at me. "Red doesn't suit you. Go change." I didn't change out of my new suit. Instead, I chose to change the wife who didn't like me in red. The moment he saw me in the same outfit, the boy by Victoria's side pouted. She turned and whispered something in his ear. The young man, Ethan, obediently turned and walked away. Then, Victoria made her way through the sea of glitz and glamour and stopped in front of me. She looked at me, her brow slightly furrowed. "Red doesn't suit you. Go change." After she said it, the whole table went quiet. But one by one, they couldn't help sneaking glances at me. Just as the air was about to freeze, someone snickered. Hilarious. A cheap imitation. I lifted my eyes to the speaker. Victoria's cousin. He was also the best friend of her lost love, the one who had died. No one had ever told me, not when we were engaged, not when we got married. No one told me Victoria carried a ghost in her heart. I didn't find out until she was pregnant with Noah, almost ready to give birth. In our 4th year of marriage, she took in a boy who looked just like him. And once again, I was the last person in the world to know. Seeing me sitting there, not moving or saying a word, Victoria's expression darkened. Her voice rose slightly. "Leo?" My gaze traveled past the people at the table and landed on her face. Maybe it was some kind of romantic touch between them. She was wearing a dark red silk scarf, which was rare for her. I stared at that splash of crimson on her chest. Suddenly, the world went completely silent. Just before she could speak again in annoyance, I stood up, pushed back my chair, and walked out. Victoria's face softened a bit. "Change your clothes and come right back." I pressed my lips together and even gave her a faint smile. But I didn't say a single word. I didn't go to the dressing room to change out of my new suit. And I didn't go back to the banquet hall. I just turned, walked to an empty side door, and left. The weather had been gloomy when I arrived. Now a fine, steady rain was falling outside. It was late spring, so the rainy night wasn't cold. I didn't even bother with an umbrella and walked straight into the rain. When I got back to the Vance estate, the housekeeper told me, quite cheerfully, "Sir, Mrs. Vance brought the young master over. They're waiting for you." My heart leaped, and I quickened my pace. Victoria gave birth to Noah in our 1st year of marriage. But Mrs. Vance said the birth had taken a serious toll on Victoria's health. She also said I was a clumsy man who wouldn't have the energy to care for a child. The day Noah turned 1 month old, she came and took him away herself. I was so devastated I nearly collapsed. I didn't even have the strength to chase after her. I could only beg Victoria through my sobs. But in the end, all I got was 1 day a week to see my son. I cherished it. But time flew by and Noah grew up. And he grew more and more distant from me. As I walked up the steps, I could hear the house filled with laughter. Noah was expertly maneuvering a remote control car. Mrs. Vance, the housekeeper, and the nanny were all gathered around him, clapping and cheering. I couldn't help but step forward, my eyes fixed on that small figure. Noah glanced up at me for a second, then went back to playing with his car. I waited patiently for him to finish, then knelt down to hug him. But he just turned and ran straight to Mrs. Vance. "Grandma, I saw Daddy. I want to go home." He hugged her leg, nuzzling affectionately against her. Mrs. Vance was all smiles as she scooped him up. "Grandma's little darling, let's go home right now." My hands were still stretched out foolishly in front of me, but all they held was a handful of cold air. I always seemed to be so slow on the uptake. Just like when Victoria humiliated me in public earlier. The sadness only started to sink in on the way home. It wasn't until long after Mrs. Vance had left with Noah that I finally crouched on the floor and began to cry silently. It felt like there was nothing and no one left for me here. Late that night, I went upstairs and packed a few things. All my documents and some personal items had to go. I didn't touch anything else. As I crossed the courtyard, I saw the grove of crabapple trees through the misty rain. I had planted those flowers myself the year Victoria and I were married. I loved them, but I only paused for 2 minutes. Then I walked away without a single backward glance. Victoria was a little tipsy. She glanced at her watch. It had been almost an hour since Leo left. It was just a suit change, and the dressing room was right upstairs. It shouldn't have taken this long. She frowned and pulled out her phone to text Leo. "Why aren't you back yet?" But the message went unanswered. Just then, Victoria's assistant approached. She bent down and whispered respectfully. "The driver said that Sir already went home." Victoria's face slowly turned to ice. This was the first time Leo had ever thrown a tantrum. And she had always hated it when men acted like that. "Get Ethan over here." The assistant's heart skipped a beat, but she nodded. "Yes, right away." When Ethan returned, he had changed his clothes, and his hair was slightly disheveled. He had clearly just been crying, his eyes were still red, and his makeup was completely gone. It gave him a clean, fragile, boyish look. Seeing him like this, Victoria was visibly lost in thought. "Ms. Vance, did I do something wrong tonight?" Ethan bit his lip and looked up at her. He had 2 tiny beauty marks at the corner of his left eye. They were even more distinct without makeup. And that was the feature that most resembled her lost love. Victoria reached out and cupped Ethan's face. She leaned down and kissed the small marks, murmuring something in a drunken haze. It was 3 days later when Victoria learned that Leo had left their marital home that night and never returned. She wasn't too concerned. Leo was the youngest son of the Kent family, but he wasn't like the other Kent sons. He'd gotten lost as a child and had supposedly suffered a great deal. He still had old scars on his body. He was already 20 when the Kents found him. He had never even been to college. His personality was already set. Quiet, withdrawn, and timid. Because of this, the Kents didn't like him. Mrs. Vance didn't like him either. So when they got married, Mrs. Vance laid down a condition. They could have a wedding, but they could only get legally married after Victoria gave birth to a son. Later, Victoria had Noah, but Mrs. Vance never mentioned making it official. Leo, being as meek as he was, never dared to bring it up. By the time she returned to their house, it had been a full week since Leo had left. It was late April. As she got out of the car, she immediately saw the grove of crabapple trees, their blossoms starting to wither. The housekeeper, seeing her displeasure, quickly explained, "Sir always took care of these himself and never let us touch them. He's still not back?" Victoria walked forward slowly, her brow furrowing even deeper. The housekeeper shook her head and whispered, "Sir hasn't been back at all." "What day is it?" Victoria asked suddenly. "It's Saturday." "Did he go pick up Noah?" Every Saturday, without fail, was the day Leo and Noah met. He was picked up. He should be here any minute. Victoria nodded, her expression returning to its usual cool indifference. "Go tell Leo that if he's not back in an hour, we're sending Noah back to the main house." Noah was sitting on the living room carpet, unwrapping a new toy. The housekeeper walked in and spoke cautiously. "Ma'am, we called Sir." Victoria grunted in acknowledgement, her eyes on Noah's small face. He looked a lot like Leo, especially his eyes. Double eyelids with long, thick lashes. He had Leo's fair skin, too, a truly adorable little boy. But the housekeeper remained standing there. After a moment, she added, "Sir said he's not coming back." Victoria's head snapped up. The housekeeper froze in terror. Even Noah seemed to sense that something was wrong and put down his toy. After a long moment, Victoria let out a cold laugh. Then she stood up and called to her son. "Noah, Mommy's taking you home." Noah stood up but asked, "Aren't we waiting for Daddy?" "We're not waiting." Victoria bent down and picked him up. "Is Daddy not coming back?" Noah sounded a little happy, but strangely, not too happy. Victoria carried Noah out of the living room and down the steps. As they passed through the half-withered crabapple garden, Victoria finally spoke. "That's right. Daddy isn't listening, so he's not allowed home for a while. This is his punishment." This felt like the most relaxed and free I'd been in years, from the time I returned to the Kents to my marriage with Victoria. I didn't have to get up at 6:30 a.m. on the dot. I didn't have to eat a Western-style breakfast every day to suit Victoria's tastes. I didn't have to spend every week anxiously waiting for Saturday. only to end up heartbroken and sleepless that night. And I didn't have to wonder when Victoria would be home tonight, or if she would come home at all. I could sleep until 10. Then I'd get up slowly and make myself a super spicy bowl of ramen. I could also binge watch dramas until 3 in the morning, crying through a whole box of tissues. Even when Noah's kindergarten teacher called to invite me to a parent-child event, I still felt a pang of sadness, but I was able to tell her calmly, I no longer have any connection to the Vance family. Please don't contact me about Noah Vance's affairs anymore. Thank you. After hanging up, I looked at the call log. The Vance housekeeper had called like clockwork every Saturday. I frowned slightly. Tomorrow was Saturday again. At 9 a.m., instead of waiting for the housekeeper to call, I called them myself. Sir? Ma'am, it's Sir on the phone. The housekeeper's voice was excited and happy. Victoria felt a slight tremor in her chest. But when she spoke, her voice was still cold. Tell him Noah isn't coming over today. The housekeeper paused for a second but did as she was told. A moment later, she returned. Sir is asking if it's convenient for you to talk. Victoria set down the newspaper she was reading. She looked down, slowly and deliberately folding the cuffs of her shirt. Only then did she hold out her hand. Give it to me. When she took the phone, she heard the faint sound of his breathing. It was so far away, yet so close, like it was gently tickling her heart. She saw the large patch of crabapple blossoms outside the French doors. Suddenly, she remembered a day when he had been running toward her with a bouquet of flowers and had almost crashed into her. That was after they were married, a rare glimpse of his playful side. Victoria thought to herself, since he's the one backing down, I'll give him an out. Leo, have you learned your lesson? The breathing on the other end seemed to stop for a second. Then his soft, gentle voice came through. Victoria, we never legally registered our marriage 4 years ago. I know. She curled her lip dismissively. So, after all this drama, what he wanted was to make their marriage official. It was bound to happen sooner or later anyway. To her, it was just a formality. So, if we separate now, we don't have to go through a messy divorce. The smile on Victoria's lips vanished instantly. What did you say? Her fingers tightened around the phone. Don't have the housekeeper call me on Saturdays anymore. I'm not coming back. I've also made things very clear with Noah's teacher at the kindergarten. Leo, what are you trying to say? Victoria, I won't take any of your assets, but the 1.2 million and all the gold you gave me when we married, I won't be returning those either. Consider it compensation for the last 4 years. Victoria had lived for nearly 30 years and had never felt such rage. But at the peak of her anger, her voice became surprisingly gentle. Have you thought this through? I have. There was not a hint of hesitation in his voice. Victoria hung up. The housekeeper stood at a distance, not daring to breathe. Just a moment ago, Ms. Vance had looked like she was smiling. They had all breathed a sigh of relief. The atmosphere in the house had been growing stranger and more oppressive by the day. But now, after Victoria ended the call, her face was terrifyingly cold. Take the phone. Victoria stood up and called the housekeeper over. She took 2 steps toward the door and saw the patch of crabapple trees. She felt even more suffocated. She turned and ordered the housekeeper, redo the master bedroom upstairs. Clear out all of Leo's things. I don't want to see them. The housekeeper was stunned for a moment but quickly nodded in agreement. Victoria strode out of the house. Her phone vibrated. A call was coming in. She glanced at the screen. It was Ethan. But she had no interest in answering. Fake was a fake. Ethan couldn't compare to Arthur. He couldn't even compare to Leo. That night, she really shouldn't have embarrassed Leo. He was angry and hurt, and he didn't want to come back. If he wanted to throw a fit, let him. With his personality, once he got knocked around a bit and saw how tough it was out there, he'd come running back home. But it was as if Leo had simply vanished. After that phone call, there was no more news from him. Once, Noah wasn't feeling well. Mrs. Vance brought him over, hoping Leo could give him a therapeutic massage. Noah had been frail since birth, and Leo had taught himself a lot about pediatric care. But when the housekeeper called his number, it was disconnected. Mrs. Vance was furious. I've never seen such a heartless father in my life. If he doesn't come back today, then he can stay away forever. The Vance family will be just fine with or without him. Mrs. Vance left with Noah in a huff. Victoria sat on the sofa for a long time without saying a word. As dusk fell, she told the driver to prepare the car. We're going to the Kents. The Kent family was quite surprised when the car pulled up. They respectfully invited her in. Seeing Victoria's grim expression, Mr. and Mrs. Kent exchanged a look. Did Leo do something wrong again? They asked cautiously. The couple wasn't particularly fond of the son they had struggled to find after so many years, especially since his son was almost 4, and he still hadn't gotten that marriage license. The thought alone was humiliating for the Kents. Victoria's hand, holding the teacup, paused. He hasn't been back these past few days? Mr. and Mrs. Kent were even more surprised. No. Victoria slowly set her cup down. He hadn't gone back to the Kents, and he had nowhere else to go in New York City. Where had Leo been all this time? Did you two have a fight? Mrs. Kent asked, her voice even more careful. Victoria was already on her feet. A small disagreement. Then it must be Leo's fault. Mr. Kent's face darkened. I'll call him and give him a piece of my mind. But Victoria stopped him. No need. We'll handle it ourselves. All right then. Couples fight, but they always make up. Mr. Kent escorted her out with a smile. As Victoria reached her car, she suddenly turned back. You have Leo's birth certificate, right? Mr. Kent was startled at first, then overjoyed. Yes, I have it right here. If you need it, Victoria, I'll go get it right now. But Victoria shook her head. You hold on to it for now. When I need it in a few days, I'll have Leo come get it himself. Of course. He can come get it any time. Mr. and Mrs. Kent happily saw Victoria off. They had long since given up hope of Victoria and Leo getting legally married. They were even prepared for Leo to be kicked out and for Victoria to remarry. But now it seemed there was a light at the end of the tunnel. Victoria was clearly thinking about making things official with Leo. For the Kent family, this was the best news they could imagine. Now, no one would dare laugh at them for only being halfway in laws with the Vances. After staying for half a month in the town where I lived as a child, I traveled to many other places I'd always wanted to see. I've always been frugal anyway. With this much money, I could live comfortably on my own for the rest of my life. I decided that if I found a town I liked during my travels, I'd buy a small one-bedroom apartment and settle down. As a child, I had been sold, adopted, and had lived in an orphanage. More than anything, I longed for a home that was truly my own. The Kent family, my birth parents, was not my home. Victoria's house wasn't my home either. After all, a 4-year de facto marriage with no legal foundation was just a castle in the air. Now that I had left, the only thing I couldn't let go of, aside from the flowers I had planted with my own hands, was Noah. But I also knew very well that the best place for Noah was with the Vance family. I'm different from other people. I've been accustomed to separation since I was a child. So while I was sad to leave, I didn't dwell on the pain for too long. Besides, with me gone, everyone was happy. Victoria could marry someone she actually liked, even though I never officially held the title of Mr. Vance. In the end, I returned to the small county where I had lived for a few years as a child. The housing prices in that town, called Havenwood, were very low. I had originally planned to buy a small apartment, but I ended up buying a small house with a yard. The people there were incredibly kind and simple. The most peaceful and happiest time of my life was spent there. It was just a shame that the old couple who had taken me in for a few years had already passed away. While handling the property transfer, however, I ran into the older girl who used to play with me when I was little. When she saw me, Chloe was thrilled. AJ, is that you? When I was adopted, my name was changed to AJ Lee. I was just as surprised to see Chloe. I never would have imagined that the little house I bought was her family's home. Chloe, long time no see. I looked at her, and all the warm memories from long ago came rushing back like a tidal wave. I couldn't stop my eyes from turning red. Aren't you married? Chloe wanted to wipe my tears like she did when we were kids, but she raised her hand and then stopped. Where are your wife and child? Aren't they with you? How have you been all these years? I heard your birth parents found you. Are they good to you? I just shook my head. I couldn't speak. All I wanted was to have a good, long cry. That's how people are. You only dare to cry so freely in front of the people you know love you the most. Chloe and I hadn't seen each other in years. But seeing her, I became the little AJ Lee from our childhood again. And she became the big sister who always protected and comforted me. They weren't good to you, were they? Chloe's eyes were a little red. I guess not. If they were, you wouldn't have come all the way out here to buy a house by yourself. This place is hundreds of miles from New York City. AJ, how much have you been hurt? Chloe. I tugged on her sleeve, my eyes swollen from crying, but a smile touched my lips. I saw the neighbors drying a lot of herbs. Could you make me that noodle soup you used to make when we were little? Chloe looked at me for a long moment. Then, just like when we were kids, she ruffled my hair and smiled. Of course, I'll make it for you. Victoria met with Ethan one last time. At the banquet that night, Ethan had been triumphant, like a flower in full bloom. Now he was noticeably haggard. Don't call me anymore. We shouldn't see each other again. The house and the car will be transferred to your name. Victoria looked at him. His long hair fell to his shoulders, and his face was bare, giving him a very pitiful look. He looked so much like Arthur. But for some reason, her heart felt nothing. I won't be coming back here. With that, Victoria turned to leave. Ethan couldn't help but cry out, Ms. Vance, I don't understand. Everything was fine between us. You said you liked me. I never liked you. But you told me to stay with you forever. I have a husband. But you don't love him, do you? Victoria looked down at the wedding ring on her finger. Didn't she love him? If she truly didn't love him at all, there were a million ways to break their engagement. But the first time she saw him at the Kent's house, she had felt a sense of pity for him. It was just that Leo was too timid, too quiet. Most of the time he was like a shadow, barely there. You could hardly feel his presence. But in the months he'd been gone, Victoria felt off. She had tried going out with friends, partying, looking for new distractions. She had even met men who looked more like her lost love than Ethan did. But she felt no spark. She rarely even thought about her lost love anymore. Instead, she often found herself thinking of Leo. They had been married for 4 years. But when they were alone, Leo would still be too shy to look at her. When he smiled, he had 2 small dimples at the corners of his mouth. Like Noah, he had very fair skin and was very handsome. Now, thinking back quietly, Victoria realized something. In their 4 years of marriage, they had been intimate often, and she had never grown tired of him. In the months he'd been away, she hadn't touched Ethan. Just last night, she had dreamed of Leo. She dreamed of some very intimate scenes. Victoria suddenly told her driver, stop at a flower shop on the way. She bought a bouquet of red roses. That evening, she went out again and bought a red suit. Leo actually looked very handsome in red. It made his skin look as white as snow, making him look striking and brilliant. She decided to take a step back, to bring him flowers and a suit, and take him home. And so I settled down. After graduating from college, Chloe started a business with a classmate. Her company was in the city, and her daily life was very busy. But every weekend, she would come back to Havenwood to be with me. The neighbor, a kind auntie, often teased me lovingly. AJ, I think Chloe really likes you. The other day you were watering the flowers in the yard, and she was standing there pouring tea, and she didn't even notice the cup was overflowing. From across the fence, the auntie's face crinkled into a smile. AJ, look, your big sister Chloe is almost 30 and doesn't have a husband. Why don't you just marry her? You two used to play house all the time as kids, and Chloe was always your bride. My little rascal was so jealous. Chloe was very good to me, even better than when we were kids. Although I can be slow on the uptake, I had been married once before. How could I not sense those feelings? Auntie, I don't know how to do anything. I never went to college and I don't have any skills. Chloe is so accomplished. Her future husband must be an outstanding man, too. I smiled, thinking of how Victoria never took me to important events. Thinking of how the Vance family never accepted me. Thinking of how I wasn't even qualified to raise my own child. If I had grown up with my birth parents, gotten a good education, and become confident and capable, maybe that marriage wouldn't have failed so miserably. A person like me is probably better off living alone. Who says? Chloe's voice suddenly came from outside the fence. The sun was setting, and she was wearing a white dress. She stood tall and graceful, elegant and gentle. The quiet, skinny girl from our childhood had grown up. Now she had gentle but strong shoulders, capable of sheltering the people she cared about from the wind and rain. AJ, you're a wonderful person. Don't sell yourself short. Am I? I looked at Chloe, bewildered. If I'm so wonderful, why don't my family, my wife, and my child like me? Of course. Chloe pushed open the gate and walked into the yard. Everyone has a purpose for being here. If they didn't see it, that's their loss. But I still couldn't believe it. Chloe, as if comforting a child, used the simplest examples to prove her point. You know how to grow flowers. The same flowers always bloom more vibrantly in your hands. You gave Mrs. Huang a massage, and her back doesn't hurt as much anymore. A few days ago, I was working late, and you helped me organize my files, data, and spreadsheets. You made everything so simple and clear. You were a huge help. If you let me, I could list your good qualities for 3 days and 3 nights. Chloe smiled, and the auntie smiled along with her. I could go on for 3 hours myself. It was as if the dark clouds over my heart were simply pushed away. That night, for the first time, I told Chloe about Victoria. I also told her about Noah. Chloe was silent for a long time and didn't say anything. Later, she drove back to the city overnight. When I heard her car leave, I felt surprisingly calm. In my short 20-something years of life, I had experienced too many goodbyes. It was as if I had become numb. I finally drifted off to sleep as dawn was breaking. But I was soon awakened by the sound of a car. I got up, feeling groggy. I walked to the window and pulled back the curtains. I saw Chloe getting out of her car. She was holding something in her hand and quickly walked to my door. Her voice was low, careful not to wake the neighbors. I hurried to open the door. Chloe? Chloe stood there, her eyes still weary from the drive. But they were exceptionally bright. I went back to get my birth certificate. If you're willing, and if you don't mind that I'm a few years older than you, let's go get married today. Get married? Yes, get married. Chloe's voice was incredibly serious. Once we're married, you'll have a home. The word home was perhaps 100 times more alluring to me than to most people. That's why something Victoria saw as a mere formality was so incredibly important to me. But a child who has been a guest in others' homes and constantly displaced learns to read people's expressions first. So I never once brought up the topic of getting legally married with her. It's ridiculous, isn't it? A person as humble as me still didn't want to accept a handout. AJ, I was too young back then. I couldn't keep you at home. Later, when I went to college in New York, I asked around for news about you everywhere. And then, when I heard your family had found you, I was so happy for you. Your birth parents are very wealthy, so I thought they would surely cherish their precious son whom they'd found after so long. I was just a poor student back then, so I didn't want to bother you. Chloe's eyes were filled with deep pain and regret. If I had known they weren't good to you, I would have come and taken you away. My parents talked about you often, too. When Mom was passing, she even called out your name. They don't want you, they don't like you, but I want you. AJ, I wasn't planning on getting married. But then fate brought you back to me. Chloe's voice suddenly choked up. I don't want to lose you again this time. I didn't know when the tears had started to fall silently down my face. I was kidnapped and sold as a child. My adoptive mother later had her own son and didn't want to keep me anymore. I was often beaten, left in the cold, and forced to do endless chores. It was Chloe's parents who took pity on me and raised me for a few years. Later, my adoptive mother forcibly took me back and sold me to someone else. I was beaten frequently in that home, so I ran away. I went to foster homes and orphanages and was briefly adopted a few times. The days of displacement seemed like they would never end. I had actually thought about coming back to Chloe's family, but I was afraid my adoptive mother would catch me and sell me again. So I never dared to come back. I never knew Chloe had been looking for me. I never knew her mom had been thinking of me when she passed away. And I never imagined that Chloe and I would meet again like this. Perhaps this was true fate. And everything in the past with the Kents and the Vances was just another trial I had to endure to get here. My eyes were red, but I looked at Chloe and shook my head with a smile. Chloe, I can't get married to you today. AJ. I saw the light in Chloe's eyes begin to shatter. It hurt me deeply. I gently took her hand. My birth certificate is still with the Kents. It'll take a whole day to go get it and come back. I never expected that getting my birth certificate from the Kents would be so easy. I also never expected my parents to be so kind and loving toward me. But while I had once craved all of this, it now felt insignificant. When I left with the document, they smiled and told me, "Bring Victoria home for dinner after you two make it official." I knew they had misunderstood, but I didn't explain. Why complicate things? Knowing them, they'd probably have a fit if they knew I was marrying a woman who wasn't worth even 1% of Victoria's fortune. After leaving the Kent's house, I took a taxi straight to the airport. On the way there, I got a call from Chloe. "AJ, I can't wait. I just landed in New York. Wait for me. We'll get married right here in the city." I couldn't help but smile. "Okay, I'll wait for you." After hanging up, I quickly told the driver, "Sir, I'm not going to the airport anymore. I need to go to City Hall now. Please hurry." The day after Chloe and I got married, she took me shopping for a lot of things. A watch, cufflinks, clothes, and 2 designer briefcases. I didn't really care for these things, but Chloe said that what other people had, I had to have too. Chloe then took me back to pay respects to her parents. After that, we had a banquet for our relatives back in our hometown. She wanted to have a proper wedding ceremony back in the city. She specifically bought a red suit for me to wear at the banquet. When I tried it on, I walked out into the yard, nervously adjusting the hem. It was a perfect spring day. At dusk, the crabapple blossoms were still awake. Looking at Chloe, for some reason, I thought of what Victoria had said that day. "I don't think red looks very good on me. Does it?" Chloe shook her head. This woman, who was always so proper she would even ask for permission before holding my hand, suddenly stood on her toes and kissed me. "My husband is exceptionally handsome." I was stunned for a moment, then I couldn't help but break into a smile. Just as Chloe was about to end the light, fleeting kiss, I leaned down and slowly closed my eyes. Victoria stood outside the simple fence. The red roses in her hand fell to the ground, the petals scattering. She saw the sweet smile on Leo's lips. The 2 dimples that made his smile even more beautiful now felt like daggers stabbing into her heart. She finally lost control and shoved open the bamboo gate. The loud noise startled both Leo and the woman, who turned around. "Victoria?" Leo's face was filled with shock and surprise, but the woman held him protectively, her face full of wariness. Victoria didn't even glance at Chloe. She walked up and grabbed Leo's wrist. "Come back with me." But Leo didn't move. He even struggled to pull his hand away. Victoria turned back, her eyes narrowing. "Leo, I'll say it one more time. Come back with me." "Victoria, I made it very clear before. I'm not going back. Didn't you always want to get legally married?" Victoria pulled out the family records she had with her. "Leo, if you come back with me now, we can register our marriage tomorrow." "But I'm already married." Victoria felt something explode in her ears. "What did you say?" "Victoria, I'm already married. Just yesterday, Chloe and I got our marriage license." I looked at her calmly. "I went back to the Kents yesterday to get my documents." Victoria seemed to laugh, as if my words had enraged her. "Leo, don't forget we were married for 4 years. Noah is our son." "I haven't forgotten, but I have to correct one thing. You and I never registered our marriage. It has no legal standing. So, Victoria, we were never in a legally binding marriage. You should go. From now on, I'll have to trouble you to take good care of Noah." After I finished, I turned away from her. "Chloe, let's go inside. I'm a little tired." I took Chloe's hand, and she immediately squeezed it tightly. "Okay, I'll take you to rest." "Leo." Victoria took another step forward and grabbed me again. "Noah misses you." I felt my throat tighten instantly, and in the next moment, my eyes turned red. Noah was only a little over 3 years old. He didn't understand anything. Even if he wasn't very close to me, I never resented him. I guess some fathers and sons are just not meant to be close. Come back with me. I'll have someone bring Noah over, and from now on, the three of us can be a family. My heart ached with a desire to cry. The irony was suffocating. So she knew everything. She knew I missed Noah, knew I dreamed of being reunited with my son. But she had just stood by and watched as Mrs. Vance took Noah away. She had refused to grant me that one wish. And now that I wanted nothing, now that I was leaving, she wanted to bring Noah back. So Noah could have been brought back all along. So some filial duties didn't need to be observed after all. Victoria, I don't need that anymore. I forcefully pulled my hand away again. I don't need a family of 3. If Noah misses me, he can come visit me. And if you allow it, I will come back to see him regularly. Leo, Noah is your own son. Aren't you afraid that if I remarry, my new husband will mistreat him? I had never seen Victoria look like this. Even when she was angry in the past, she was composed. But now her eyes were blazing, and her beautiful face looked almost contorted. When Noah was born, she used him to threaten me. Now that I was leaving, she was using the same tactic. But I was no longer afraid of losing anything. Chloe taught me that I am Leo first, and then a husband or a father. I spent those years in a daze, having completely lost myself. It wasn't entirely other people's fault that they looked down on me and didn't care about me. So now I had to be myself first. I would do anything to protect Noah, but he is your flesh and blood too. He was raised by Mrs. Vance since he was a month old. She has doted on him for over 3 years, so I doubt she would let him be mistreated. Besides, if that day ever comes, I took a deep breath, Victoria. I will take you to court for his custody. So you're determined to be with her? I nodded. Yes. All because of a red suit? Victoria sneered. Leo, in the 4 years we were together, how much of what I gave you can she ever give you? It's not just about a red suit. I looked up at Chloe. Her eyes held anger and indignation. But even more, they held pain and guilt. Victoria, you can like many people. But in my wife's heart and eyes, there is only me. I've already broken things off with Ethan. And that ghost from your past, I've long let him go. Leo, no matter what, we were husband and wife for 4 years. I'm not without feelings for you. Victoria's brow was deeply furrowed. It was clear she was reluctant to talk about these things. She was reluctant to admit that she now had feelings for me. As if falling for someone like me was a gift from a superior to a subordinate. A gift that couldn't quite be brought into the light. But I no longer hoped for the scraps of affection she might deign to give me. In the deepening twilight, the crabapple blossoms I had planted with my own hands were still beautiful. Even more beautiful than the ones in the Vance family's garden. Victoria said she had let go. And so had I. For years had worn away all the love I felt at first sight. Now, I was going to live the stable life of an ordinary person. Victoria, I used to love you. But now it's all gone. You should go back, and please don't look for me again. You should find a husband whose knowledge and experience can match yours. Someone you can be proud of. Not someone like me who only knows how to tend to flowers and plants. I'm sorry for wasting 4 years of your life, Victoria. I stood in the night breeze and looked at Victoria one last time. Back then, when she didn't break off our engagement and married me, I was truly grateful. Because at that time, every single second at the Kent's house felt like torture. Victoria took me away from the Kents and gave me a temporary home. For me at that time, it was a kind of salvation. After all, if she had broken the engagement, the Kents might have sold me off like a commodity to any woman. And for someone like me who had been sold several times as a child, that would have been a nightmare. So even now, I still hope she can live a good life. And I don't wish to become mortal enemies with Noah's mother. If we can part peacefully, then I suppose it's a happy ending for everyone. Victoria's perspective. Leo and Chloe's wedding was quite grand. Considering Chloe's financial situation at the time, the budget was very high. But she was willing, and others would naturally only praise her deep affection. Leo cried at the wedding quite hard. He hadn't even cried that hard when he married me. He said, "My name is Leo Kent, but my life until now has been full of hardship. I am so grateful to my wife, Hearing those words at the time was quite jarring. In the 4 years he was married to me, I thought I hadn't treated him poorly. In my circle, keeping lovers and boy toys was commonplace. Which socialite hasn't had a stable of boy toys? But I only lost my mind and kept one, Ethan. And I got tired of him quickly. Other than that, I was faithful. I don't believe his wife, Chloe, could truly remain devoted to one person. Women, with or without money, will seek pleasure, especially with money, so I secretly helped things along. Chloe's company grew bigger and bigger, and she earned more and more money. Naturally, the temptations would also increase. At that point, a person with Leo's personality would surely not tolerate it. If he and Chloe divorced and I went to him with Noah, perhaps he would come back to us. But in the blink of an eye, 10 years passed. Chloe never took a single wrong step. He and Chloe had a daughter. She looked exactly like him. I was terribly jealous. Noah grew up and looked more and more like me. Although everyone in the Vance family is very good looking like a lonely person like me isn't a good thing. His relationship with Noah, however, got better and better. They are father and son after all. How could there be some irreconcilable hatred like in a novel? Sometimes Noah would go stay with him for a few days. Leo would naturally have him look after his little sister. Their sibling relationship was also perfect. Sometimes Leo would come to our house to see Noah. While father and son talked, I would mindlessly tend to the flowers outside. Every time I wanted to offer him a ride home. But Chloe would always come to pick him up personally. She guarded against me like I was a monster. But this wasn't so bad. With me as a cautionary tale, Chloe wouldn't make the same common mistakes. And so, Leo's life, for the rest of his days, would naturally be nothing but sweet.